Welcome to the At Sea Podcast. I'm your host, Justin McRoberts, and this is your co-host, producer Dan Portnoy. Welcome to the odd, downward spiral of information and conversation that has become this podcast. Because in essence, I am the host, and I am hosting Dan Portnoy, who is playing host to me. So we're I think we should just start calling our media company Meta. I think that might land.
Well, I'm the Steve Arterburn to your James Dobson.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd throw that out. Meanwhile, everyone who's
great.
listening is like, no!
Nope. Can't. Don't. Please.
Stop it!
Lots of triggers going off right now.
Yeah.
Some of which are probably
PTSD.
But not all.
Yeah.
We are, Dan and I, walking through the book Sacred Strides, digging into the stories, talking about the themes, giving you an opportunity, if you liked the book, which I think you did, if I'm honest, give you an opportunity to dig a little bit deeper and hear more about it. And if you have not come across the book or given it a shot, giving you all kinds of reasons to do it. This is a chapter 5, that I entitled Pacing Myself, or Coffee, College, and Knowing My Limits. Dan, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here. As Steve Arterburn.
It's funny. It's funny, but it makes me James Dobson. And I mean, I'll take his numbers. God knows.
Well, yeah.
I'll take
he
his
did
numbers.
All right.
I just don't want to do with his numbers what he did. That's all.
I feel like his numbers have trailed off a bit.
I won't take it. Let me rephrase that. I'll take his numbers from 1987.
Yes.
I don't want his numbers.
Easy.
Now. Yes.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I don't know his numbers now. Still, I mean, yeah. But anyway, moving on. So this chapter, first off, I think it's great. Like, I love that everybody is responding so much to your Instagram and leaving comments and talking about this and checking it out and complimenting me. That's really the part that I'm really enjoying.
Favorite part?
Yeah, it's my favorite part so far. So thanks, everybody. It's great. It's great. Keep it up if we could. Send me a note. I don't know. Yeah, it's great. But seriously, this is the chapter that made me laugh the most, I think, just because I was trying to picture college age Justin doing these things, and it was very funny to me. It just kept me going a little bit. So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit of what's going on in this chapter, the up to now, because it's too good.
So in essence, the chapter at its root, if there's a moral or whatever to the moral angle to the chapter, it's about limitations and growing comfortable with one's limitations. But as we keep coming back to, like, there are just things that we learn that we can't. There are things that I don't think we learn cognitively. We have to like actually learn them in our bodies. We have to learn them like in life and in rhythm. And so there are certain kinds of this is from one of the prayer books. Like there's a certain kind of wisdom in life that only comes from trying and failing and getting back up again. And coming, like, limitations and learning my limits is one of those things. Like, I don't know how limited I am until I try to exceed my limits and implode. Now, the comical character in this chapter, in They Become a Character, is Coffee. I make Coffee into a character because it really was more like a relationship than it was just like it wasn't a consumable. It was like a featured person in my life. And I was, at the time, Coffee was helping me do way more than I could do now. That's for darn sure. And way more. I shouldn't say that I was at my capacity. Like, I was in college full time. I had a job as a Young Life staff person doing youth ministry. I was also teaching junior high and high school off and on as a substitute teacher. I was also working on a church plant with some friends. I apparently had some form of social life. Like I had a ton of stuff happening, and Coffee was the thing that, like, was, and I didn't know at the time, was sort of like holding me together and providing the energy for my big fat days. That's the broad context for this chapter.
Yeah. And so you're trucking along doing, like, I don't, when I look back at like what I was doing in my 20s, my early 20s, and it's like, so you didn't sleep, you did everything, and there was no way there wasn't going to be a social component, where now I'm like, I'm going to bed. You know, so there's like, yeah, I'll catch you tomorrow. When it's that whole like, hey, can we meet up at 9:00? And you're like, at night? Because I'm gonna be going to bed. Like, it's just because I'm up early. But yeah, I can't even imagine the idea of like, no, I'll just hang out super late. One of the things that I think is really great, though, you kind of give us a rundown in the chapter of like what your life was and what was happening on the way. Do you mind just giving us the kind of the Cliff's Notes on the schedule on that? Yeah, because it's impressive.
So this is I actually break the schedule down twice, and the one is just the actual schedule, and later on I kind of drop a joke with it. But the schedule I was keeping, I think this was Thursdays. Yes, the schedule Coffee and I kept. This is the way I read the book. The schedule Coffee and I kept varied slightly from day to day, but not much. For instance, the average Thursday, my senior year of college, looked like this: 6:30 a.m. wake up, 7:15 a.m. drive to class, 8 o'clock to 9:30 was class. From 9:45 to 11ish, I had class. There was another class that like it was 11ish because sometimes the teacher would let us out early and sometimes we would go late. At noon, I would drive to Clayton Valley High School, where I was doing youth ministry, doing Young Life. I was on campus from 12 to 12:35. At 1 o'clock, I'd drive back to class at St. Mary's. Now, the drive from Clayton, where I was doing ministry, to St. Mary's is about 40 minutes. Drive back to class. And then from 1:30 to 3 o'clock, I had another hour and a half class on the Thursday. And at 3 o'clock, I realized that I didn't have a girlfriend, and then I was pretty okay with that. 4 o'clock, we would usually have a work meeting, and the work meeting in Walnut Creek, which is right next to where my school was, so I would drive in for the work meeting. 5:30, I would have dinner at a burrito place right around the corner from the college. From 5:30 to 6:30, I would read while I was eating dinner for my classes. And then I had a class on Thursdays from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. It was a class on monsters and movies. That was a Thursday. And the reason I give the Thursdays because I couldn't remember. And this is the thing about being in my 20s. I can remember those Thursdays because it was like super structured. Like that's relatively short. I had places to be. But most of my days were like that. I was up early. Either I was substitute teaching or I had a class to get to. And I just don't remember going to bed before midnight. And most days I couldn't tell you for sure like what kept me going, like what I was doing and where I was supposed to be during those hours. But like I know without question, I was up before 6:30 every morning for most of my 20s to get life done, and I wasn't in bed, before midnight most of the time. My days are just jam packed, and that's here's the Thursday. Sometimes the work meeting was for Young Life. Sometimes the work meeting was for church. I just had a ton going on, and I loved it. I was thrilled.
Yeah, so you're thriving on this like thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. The true extrovert in you getting energized from person to person to person to person so much.
Yes.
You're doing work on yourself, doing work in class, doing work with kids, and just bouncing. And then a problem happened.
Yeah. So this is the way I wrote it. I said it was a Thursday night, and my paper was due on Friday morning. Shocking. Everyone knows this story. I was clocking away on the keyboard, and my heart was singing. I was at my mom's house, by the way, because I didn't own a computer. I was clocking away at the keyboard, and my heart was singing with joy as my paper's thesis became clear, and I neared a reasonable, if not beautiful, conclusion. My heart was also beating somewhat quickly, which I took slight notice of, but didn't think much about. That is until I noticed the pinky and ring fingers on my left hand felt numb on the keyboard. When I pressed down, the tips of those fingers didn't register the keys, and that kind of freaked me out. And by kinda, I mean completely. Obsessing over these tics and oddities in my body, I noticed my skin felt sticky and that my breathing was a bit fast. I could tell my heart was racing. So I asked Coffee, this is why Coffee becomes a character. So I asked Coffee if he had any idea what was going on. I don't know, man, but I'm here with you. It's going to be okay. The next thing I knew, the same fingers in my right hand were also numb. So I did the very thing you'd expect a reasonable, level-headed person to do in such a moment. I called my doctor to tell him I was dying. This story, there are slight, like tiny little exaggerations and like maybe it's just the timing, but everything about the story is entirely true. Like it began in my left hand, went to my right hand. I went into full-blown freak out mode and I called my doctor at like 4:30 in the morning. And no joke, I thought I was about to die. He got a message from me that I was in terror. Absolutely.
So he calls you back.
He called. So I called my mom. This is pre-cell phone.
Yeah.
I call him at. There's an answering machine. Remember answering machines?
I do.
There was an answering machine at the doctor's office. He calls back and says, the office doesn't open at till 7 or whatever, but I can be there early. So I meet him early, and I'll tell the story instead of read it. But I got in the office, and on the way to the office, I get a cup of coffee. And by a cup of coffee, I mean I left my little place where I was, where I was awake drinking coffee, and I go by 7-Eleven. I had one of those huge orange 7-Eleven 32-ounce mugs that they used to sell. Like I can still see it. I can feel the texture of it in my hand. It was a companion. Like it wasn't. So I grab a coffee on the way, and I'm sitting in the doctor's office with this massive coffee, talking about how my heart is beating super fast. And my doctor's like, listen, there's no, you don't have any history at all of heart failure in your family, but can we talk about how much coffee you're drinking? And what's nuts about this is I didn't see it at all. I didn't see it at all. It didn't register. It's like, how much coffee are you drinking? And you would figure a relatively self-aware human to be like, it's funny you would ask that because I've been wondering if I'm drinking too much coffee. Like that's how that conversation should have gone. But he was like, you talk about how much coffee you're drinking. And I was like, why? Like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, what are you talking about? And he says, you should either cut back on your coffee consumption. This is a real quote. This family doctor. So you should either cut back on your caffeine consumption or start doing something like speed. It's absolutely what he said, like right to my face. He was a wonderful man and had known my family for a long time. But he was like, dude, you are hurting yourself.
Yeah. So what was the amount of coffee that you were consuming on a daily basis?
So when I do the math in chapter, it amounts to about 16 cups of coffee a day.
So that is 2 pots of coffee
every day.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was all the time. It was 2 pots of coffee, which this is the thing that happens. And I mean, I make a joke of it with relation to coffee because we can tell jokes about coffee in the same way that we do with ADHD. But the reality was it crept up on me. I didn't decide. Yeah. I didn't go from I need to get all this stuff done. I'm going to need 2 pots of coffee. It was just right. It was what was happening in my life. And I grabbed the thing and then I grabbed another one and then down. I have no idea when it started. I know I started drinking coffee when I was 12 or 13. But it wasn't just it wasn't like I liked coffee so much I kept drinking more of it. My early coffee experiences were just it's neat that I get to drink coffee because I felt cool.
Sure.
At 13, I'm I'm going to come. But once I got to college, and started, once I was in college doing important college work, and I'm doing Young Life, which is important life work, and I'm planting a church, which is important life work. And I'm doing all this important stuff, and I feel like I've got to show up for all of it and be spot on, aware, present, ready to go. Coffee was the thing that I felt helped me stay present and active and effective in all of these facets. And I didn't see it as a dependency. I didn't see it as a thing I was leaning on in order to get my important stuff done, which is why when my doctor's like, you're drinking a lot of coffee. I was like, I don't know. What does that have to do with life and me achieving things? I just didn't see it. Blind as a bat.
Well, you say here that, and this is the really fun part, is that obviously you're going 140% on the reactor for a good long time, and then for you to say that by working to overcome or bypass my limitations, I was in effect declaring that my humanity was in the way of my productivity. It was a problem that you were human. So yeah, I mean, and that is, I do feel in some ways that I definitely can relate to that, of being like upset with myself that why can't I go any further? Why can't I, like running till the wheels fall off, and then you have to you sleep for a day and a half and you have to apologize to a whole bunch of people because you just couldn't do it anymore, or something terrible happens. So what how did you solve that in terms of your humanity to your productivity?
Well, I didn't solve it. And because there's like two, this is so much of the book, which is why I like this book so much, is there are these parallel teachings here, parallel bits of wisdom. The one is the simple thing to say, which is like, I was treating myself like my limitations were a problem, and that it was a problem that I was human, and that what mattered was the bottom line. So I need to get grades, so that, bottom line, and if you're in college, you're paying for college, crush it. Get the grades for your parents and for your future. And I'm doing ministry, like, well, make sure Jesus is happy with the work you're doing. Like, work hard, achieve, you get souls saved, the whole nine. And then I'm doing substitute teaching. Like, I got to show up on time. I got to execute. I got to be a good teacher. I got to make the money. Like, I was submitting my well-being to bottom lines. And the one lesson, which I get into in the book, is like, that's in the long run, like, you don't want to treat yourself like a machine. You want to work within your limitations. The other side to that teaching, which is the teaching in and of itself, is like, I really mean it when I say this. There are lessons we just can't learn unless we blow it, unless we fail. Like, you have to cross lines. You have to come up, specifically when it comes to limitations. I'm going to full-blown suggest, with very rare exception, you have to get to your limits and exceed your limits and experience life on the other side of exhaustion, maybe even burnout, before you actually take seriously the notion of limits. Which is to say this, part 2B of the teaching. In my 20s, I'm so thankful I ran the pace I ran. I don't look back at my 20s and think, like, you moron, like, you were totally crossing, like, you were way over capacity. I'm so thankful that I was running over capacity, because I know exactly what it feels like now. And the price I pay in my 30s, 40s, and 50s, if I'm exceeding my capacity, the price I pay, the price my family pays, the price my friends pay, the cultures I'm trying to care for pay, if I'm over capacity, is so much higher the older I get. So if I'm going to learn that lesson, if you're in your 20s, or if you have someone who's a teenager or a kid in their 20s, now is the time to be like at an over capacity, so that you learn the shape of your own desires and your works, which is another part of the book. But so that you learn your limits, but you also learn what it actually feels like to be at your limit and to exceed it. If you don't know what it feels like, you just won't believe the teaching when someone says, work within your limitations, accept limitation as a part of being human. You just won't believe it. You have to believe it in your body. And your 20s that's the time. That is the season in which you like go for it, hit the wall, and have people around you to help work out what it looks like to live better as you get older.
Unless of course you're smarter than that, and you know that you don't need to run that, because you're like, oh, I'm getting close to my limit. I'll make a smart choice here, and take the break.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess what I'm saying is, like, that kind of intelligence, the kind of intelligence it takes to actually live within limitations, I think, is an experiential intelligence. I think if I only
I definitely was not born with that. No,
if I only believe that in concept, I won't really believe it. And then I will either undersell my abilities in life, and I will come up short of things that I'm actually capable of, because I don't know that I have that fifth gear. I don't know that I've got that extra 12%, which is as tragic, because you and I both know cats. It's like, bro, you have another 5 hours in your week. You do. Like, I know so many cats. Yeah. It's like, dude, you've got another 5 hours in your week. I know you feel like you're at your limit. I'm telling you, you're not. Push past this, because the greatness of your project is on the other side of that 5 hours.
Right.
There's that. But then also, like, I won't really, in my 30s and 40s, as I came up against limits, I had the experienced memory of that piece of wisdom. I was like, this is what it felt like then. I don't want to feel like that now. And this thing I'm doing is way too important for me to show up like half-brained and burned out.
And flame out on it.
Yeah. It's easier to flame out and better to flame out in your 20s because for the most part, I'm so sorry, guys. If you're in your 20s, I apologize for this. The stuff you're doing just isn't as important as the stuff you'll be doing in your 30s and 40s and 50s. It's just not. And the weight of your relationships, the weight of your projects, the wisdom of your projects, like it's not bad stuff. It just doesn't carry the same weight. So play minor league ball while you're in the minor leagues and strike out as hard as you can so that by the time you actually hit the majors, like you know what a curveball looks like and you won't swing it.
Right. Yeah, because I think the thing that what changes is the things that start creeping in. Because I mean, coffee is a great piece to be able to energize yourself and get past a whole bunch of things. But there's so many more things on my time right now, and the things that I think are important, and I can't tell you, like just creatively, since getting married, my priorities changed drastically, and some of it was very frustrating to figure out what my new normal was. Of just like because it is important to me, to be a good husband and to try and be a good dad and try to like do all these things, and then it's like, but I'm supposed to be working, I'm supposed to be creating these things, I'm supposed to be doing, and it was honestly, I'm coming out of a season of that wasn't that important. Like, did I do some work? Yeah. Do I have some things that are in the background? Sure. But that was not the point. The point has been I have to kind of figure out what was kind of that new normal, that new it's funny, I'm only want to say like new buoyancy on the
I think buoyancy is a great image for this too. Like where is, because that's actually what it ends up feeling like, because your life moves like this. Can I ride this and be okay? When it dips, am I going to be okay? When it rises, can I be okay? And again, that's experiential knowledge. That's something that like I learn by sinking, by floating. I learn it by doing it, and I just don't get to that knowledge. Right.
And I've been completely exasperated at times. Like, I don't know how to make my life work. Being frustrated with that. And I've heard, and I'm sure that you have, either creatives or even, it makes me think of actually kind of that moral relativism of, from a ministry standpoint, that it's like these guys, and I say guys because I feel like most of the women that I've encountered in a ministry setting are much more understanding of like I don't know, priorities being different, like that I've never encountered I've encountered so many guy pastors who are sacrificing their family to the altar of I have to do something pastoral, and it hurts, like it just hurts so bad to see it, because these, you talk with the kids, because and they're like, I don't really have a relationship with my dad because my dad's running all over town because everybody else is important, but we're not important. And it's kind of, I don't know what you're going to church like. It was always hilarious to me, like growing up, that my mom would yell at us probably the most Sunday morning right before church, and then we'd get into church and it was like, I will kick your butt, and then the threatening to our lives was the most Sunday morning, and then we were fine once we were in church. Everything was good. But like, it's just kind of that weird priority thing there that creatives.
The creatives, it's creatives, and I think it's creatives, it's entrepreneurs, and I think the emphasis on like the male experience when it comes to limitations is culturally different. It's one of the places where if you're someone who's working with younger men, like younger men like in their late teens, early 20s, maybe even early 30s, like know going in that one of the things you get the opportunity to help these men do is learn their limitations, and learn that to learn what their limitations are, to learn that it's not just okay to have them, but that it's necessary to have them. Because as culture has turned, one of the sales points for most productivity cultures that like puts men in a corner, the whole you are what you do, bottom line productivity narrative, it is expansive and it goes across cultures and genders and the whole nine. That's not true. But it has been mostly heaped upon men because of the breadwinning position men have been in, but also because like the male energy, like go get him culture, like is a really male sounding culture. And so if you are someone who works with young men, teaching men in their late teens through their 20s and their early 30s, like to get to their limitations, to have a conversations about burnout, like that's some really important work. Like no matter what kind of work you're doing, getting young men to figure out to work with limitation is so vital. That's because again, the cats I know who are burned out and tired in their 60s or 70s, they had great productivity counselors. They had really good coaches. They had good leaders in a bunch of ways, but very few of them had like gracious, kind people who were like, listen, I love what you're doing. I love the work you're putting in. I think you're insanely talented. And I want you to find your edge so that later on in life, whether you're contributing to my thing or not, you're a healthy worker. So if you get to coach men and work with men, man, that's an opportunity you have to make sure they're healthy in their 50s and 60s.
Yeah. When I first joined a church way back, was this 2002? As a media director, that was the conversation. One of the first conversations was like, you can cheat the church kind of thing, or you can cheat your family. And I didn't have a family, a single guy, but they were still like, listen, this work never ends. So you just have to get okay with where you can stop for the day. So, and that was a big conversation of just like, where can you put it down? And that still holds with me now. Like, oh yeah, where am I stopping for the day? Am I comfortable with this? Am I not comfortable with this? Or if I'm frustrated, one of the things lately has been much more like looking at my phone time. How much phone time did I spend? How much,
is that where you go when things start to fizz?
Oh yeah, because I need the dopamine, right? Because I'm frustrated because I'm creating something and my brain is screaming for like dopamine, like, so just do a like or something on Instagram or whatever, like one of those little get a little boop, boop, maybe something happened. Nothing happened. But that's been the interesting thing looking at was that it's Stolen Focus? Yeah, Stolen Focus. I finished that book. Holy Moses.
It's fantastic.
But just how upsetting to see that so much is against.
Yes.
Well, in that whole phone culture scenario that we're, even if we're being really smart with our phones.
That's part of, that's part of somewhere near the heart of this chapter is, I use coffee and I try to make it funny, and I think I make it funny, but like, I don't make it funny to make it anecdotal so that like I laugh. I'm trying to get readers to laugh their way into some sort of knowledge. It's more like I want folks to be comfortable with the notion that we do have dependencies, and instead of just being ashamed of like, crap, I have this dependency, because this is what we're doing with phones. This is what, and to some degree, like when we talk about caffeine and that kind of thing, like we do with caffeine, where it just becomes shame. It's like, well, you have a dependency and you shouldn't, is the narrative. What I'm saying in this chapter and with dependencies in general is like, let's follow the thread. Like if you're avoiding this, and this is very Margaret Silf spiritual formation stuff, if this thing is putting you, if this is a dependency you have, let's follow the thread. Like, what story is this thing telling you? Like, what bar are you trying to rise above? Or like, if the phone is the distraction and the dopamine thing, like what is this feeding you that you want to be getting elsewhere? Like, there's a question in all of our dependencies, whether it's caffeine or the phone or whatever it is, there's a question that our soul is asking that we're answering with a lesser thing. I'm going to answer that question with coffee. I'm going to answer that question with likes. So what's the question the thing is asking? Shame in all of these things. And this is why, like, hit your limits, exceed your limits, and have good people around you to process them with, because shame will just keep us in that spiral. You have a dependency. We need to get rid of it without dealing with the root causes, because the root cause is the narrative you're living in, and you're not going to learn it if you just shame yourself into silence. Or if you're experiencing shame, you're just going to hide your dependency. And that was part of what my subconscious was doing when my doctor's like, why are you drinking so much coffee? I'm like, why are you asking me? Like, I was like, we're not going to deal with that. We're gonna like, I'm very aware that I'm over capacity over here, but I'm going to, I don't want to talk about that because I'm exhausted all the time. And so shame was keeping me from actually seeing my life. Hit your limits,
so
exceed them, and then have people to talk to about your limits.
It's interesting because you're saying shame, and it's funny because I would have thought fear. Because that's like fear being the motivator of like I'm getting stuck as I'm creating something, and the fear being like I can't figure this out, I can't figure it out, and I'm like I'm kind of stuck. So what am I need the dopamine from something else.
I think that happens too. I think that drives us. I think most of the time the thing that drives us to patterns of dependency and to like our most unhealthy patterns is shame. So if I'm afraid that I don't know how to get it done, the thing that ends up happening in me is like I end up identifying with that. It's not like there's a project and there's a problem and I want to solve it. You and I are very similar in this way. It's like if there's a project and there's a problem, like I actually really enjoy, I thrive in like, I don't know how to do this. Oh, hell yes. Let's learn a thing. I'm super down.
Totally.
Give me the tools or I'll build a tool. What ends up being a problem is when I come up against a limitation and I can't fix it. It's not like I'm afraid. It's like I'm ashamed. I am not capable. And then I identify with my limitation. This is what I'm saying in the chapter. Like it became a problem that I was human. That's shame. Shame says it's a problem that you have limitations, and that's not about my capabilities. That's about my humanity. So hitting the limits in our humanity, learning the shape of our humanity, and having people to point us back and say, this is part of what it looks like for you to be you. This is part of what looks like your limitations are part of what it looks like for you to be a whole human being. Like that's the ballgame. Fear is part of the journey. Fear is the thing we experience at the front end of a project. Like, I'm not sure I can do this. That's fine. Yeah. Shame is the thing that will cast us into the darkness where we don't actually deal with our crap and we stay with our dependencies long-term instead of actually doing the inner and outer work that we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. That creative part of where it's like, oh no, this project is crap. And then it becomes, I'm crap.
That's it. Exactly.
That's so quick that becomes, I'm now crap.
Yes. And this thing sucks.
Like Dark Night of the Soul happen.
100%. This thing sucks, or this situation sucks, or this project sucks, or this day sucks. Right. Totally fine. Or like, I'm nervous. I'm afraid that I won't be able to pull this off. All that's like, get that. But the point of it, when it's like, I suck, I'm incapable, I can't get this done, I won't that. Now I'm identifying with it. That's where I get stuck. And that's where like our dependencies win in the long run.
Yeah, totally. The thing that you say here, and this is the other quote that I highlighted here, is being a beloved of God also means that my drive or motivation to work and my freedom to fully rest are extensions of and celebrations of God's love. So I am not really great at rest. I haven't been like the whole Sabbath thing just in general and like taking time away, even though, I know the anecdotes of like, well, if you have to cut down a tree, you spend the first hour sharpening your blade and, like this whole thing. And like, I know that that's wisdom. I do. But like in practice, it's like, well, okay, what if I just did like half a day work here and then I'm able to do my family stuff and then I'm half a day tomorrow as opposed to just maybe bucket really hard today and then tomorrow just take the day and don't do anything. That is I feel like I'm always like, which plate is gonna fall, which plate is spinning, and how do I keep it moving?
And the thing I think we learned, the thing I've learned is like, plates hit the ground and I'm going to be okay. And that's part of experiencing, limitations. So the coffee story, some of what doesn't happen in this chapter is I talk about like, there are classes I got B's in that I could have gotten A's in. And like, am I giving parents permission right now to like let their kids get B's and C's? Yes, I am. Like, like there are classes I could have gotten better grades in. Totally. But if I really wanted to live the life I was living, where like I was doing Young Life and I wanted to do Young Life, and I was teaching and I wanted to be teaching, and I was going to school. If I wanted to do all these things, something was going to hit a plate was going to hit the ground. A compromise was going to be made. That is living with a limitation. Limitation doesn't mean like within these limits, I've got to figure out how to get all of it done still. And do it all how to get it all done at the same pace and capacity and the same excellence. Part of living within my limitations was what part of learning to live within my limitations was recognizing that something's going to probably suffer. And it forces a question about priority. What my caffeine dependency was doing was saying, like, none of this has to suffer. The thing that can suffer in order for you to get all this done can be your health. Your health can be compromised. Something's going to get compromised because you're living within limitations. Okay, fine. So the thing we're going to compromise is your health, your relationships, your well-being, and your self-worth. And then we can get all of this crap done. If we can compromise your health, your well-being, your self-worth, if we can get that stuff compromised, then that clears all kinds of room for all this other stuff to get achieved. Like, that was the deal I was making with myself. And it's the deal we're making most of the time. Living within limitation means, like, I'm going to get a B in this class instead of an A, or I might get a C in this class and I'm still going to graduate. That's one of those, like, real life compromises we have to make. Or, like, this project that I'm doing, I'm going to either I'm gonna have to push this back and I'm going to miss my deadline, which, like, I've done on 2 books now. Like, I've call a publisher up and say, I'm not going to hit the deadline because I won't be healthy if I do. I'm going to miss a deadline, or this won't be this tough one. This won't be the greatest thing I've ever done. And I'm going to get it done. Living with limitations means, like, I have to I learn to prioritize. This is the important thing, and this thing is less important. And then this thing is less important. And sometimes that's a list of projects, but the thing at the top is always this. I am the thing that, like, I'm the thing at the top. My health, my well-being, like, my wholeness is the thing at the top of that scenario every time. And the thing that cannot be compromised in the long run is my well-being, my health, my mental health, my primary relationships. That's the thing that I cannot compromise, because then
because it isn't just person. It's also, like, that family thing too, because if your family's not okay, you're not okay.
Absolutely. And again, that's experiential knowledge. The thing we feel like, I mean, is this not true, bro? Like, the thing we feel like we can skate on and just get done is, like, our own health, our own well-being, and our own primary relationships. That's the thing we feel like we can skate on. I feel like I can skate. This is why we don't practice Sabbath. This is why our relationships suffer so much. Is like, we feel like that's the stuff. This is the hard work over here. Is getting the project done, meeting the deadlines, clearing the bar, maximizing this, scaling that. That's all the hard work. And then once I get the hard work done, I can power down and go, like, skate in all my primary relationships and in all my health stuff. And I'll get a little bit of time in the gym, all kind of stuff. In the long run, we figure out, like, okay, wait, that was actually the hard work. The hard work was actually being, like, a loving friend and a present partner. And, like, that was actually the hard work. And I could have compromised all this crap in order to actually be the whole person that I was supposed to be.
Yeah, I think that Seth Godin talks about, like, you got to stay in the game. And if you don't play in such a way that because it's just always around the circle, right? New project, you finish the project, new project, you finish the project. But if you can't stay in the game because you're destroying yourself and you're sacrificing, that's just not gonna work. So, so then we come back to help me understand what are some ways that I can make sure that I am powering down and being okay with leaving my project where it is for the moment.
So the few things, again, from this chapter 1 is that they're, paying attention to the season of life that I'm in. Or the season of life I'm in, or the season, even within a season of life. So, are you a person in your 20s? In that case, like, there are certain learning curves, and it's time to, like, put in truckloads of hours into things that you actually care about and find your limits. That's primary. This is the time to do that. If you are someone in your 30s and 40s, paying attention to the things, well, even if you're in your 20s, as we're doing that work, paying attention to our dependencies. Like, what is the thing that you are adding to your life? What is the thing that you are adding to your body chemistry or to your hours? Like, is it some sort of phone dependency? Is it some sort of chemical dependency? Instead of letting shame, like, tell you, like, keep that quiet and let's not talk about it. No. Let's look at it square on and say, okay, what is this? What am I telling myself this does for me? This is why I make Coffee a character, is because like Coffee would be like, dude, we can do all this stuff. In fact, we can do this stuff and more. Like it was like there was a story being told. What the thing I'm dependent upon, what is that thing telling me and promising me that it can do for me that I'm in love with? Do the work of like, instead of being like, I shouldn't be hooked on coffee or I shouldn't be crushing Red Bull. Okay, that's probably true. Why though? Like, why are you doing it? Because if you don't face that question of like, why am I sucking this stuff down that I know is not great for me, then you'll turn that one in if you do, and you'll go find another one. Because it's not just the chemical dependency, it's the story I'm living in. And this thing is selling me on that story. That's the primary bit from this chapter, is like, what's the story here that that coffee was telling me? So, pay attention to the season of your life you're in. But if you have dependencies like coffee, what's the story that thing is telling you that you actually believe? That's the hard work. And boom.
And boom.
Dude, thank you.
Yeah. Another one. Done.
Over and over. For in perpetuity, at least for 7 more rounds-ish.
7 more rounds.
Thanks, Dan. This is great.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for listening to this episode of the Outseat Podcast. I'm your host, Justin McRoberts. This is producer Dan Portnoy. We have been talking about Chapter 5 of the book Sacred Strides, which you can purchase. And I think you should. You can go to heartsandmindsbooks.com and buy it from my good friend Byron Borger. It's my favorite bookseller in America, maybe the world. Or if you're one of those clickety-click people, you just like to make the 2 clicks and have it show up on your doorstep, that is totally fine too. Sacred Strides is available on Amazon and the other places. If you're looking for a bunch of them, then just message me. Like I'm your dealer. If you're looking for lots of me, I'm your gateway to lots of me. And message me and I can get you a pretty good deal on books, like if it's 20 or more books. Outside of that, have a wonderful Christmas season. Dan and I'll be back doing this on the other side of the new year. Blessings. See you again.